Yo, what's going on, boys? Welcome back to episode 4 of the Juicecast. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics, but the first topic I wanted to touch upon was the main event of UFC 327, as it is obviously UFC 327 Fight Week. A lot of fans have been talking about this card for quite a bit, not only the main event, but the rest of the card as well, as at least on paper, it seems like by far the best card that we've gotten so far this year. There's been a lot of complaints about the card quality as of late, especially, some things that I've been talking about in the previous episodes of this channel. But this card is actually really good from top to bottom. But for this podcast, I'm really just going to be centered around the main event, Jiri Prochazka versus Carlos Ulberg. And in terms of the rest of the card, I'll be talking about that a lot on live streams on Juicy MMA. If you guys are interested, be sure to tune into those. I'll also be posting a full in-depth breakdown of the main event on Juicy MMA as well, alongside with tomorrow on this channel. Actually, I'm going to be posting my predictions for the entirety of the card for 327, and Saturday night I'm going to be posting my reaction to the entirety of the card. So a lot of information coming out about UFC 327, but in this podcast, I just wanted to quickly touch over the main event itself. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So in terms of the main event, it's an interesting fight, but I think Jiri is going to win, just to tell you, straight off the bat. I do think early Jiri is going to struggle because Jiri always struggles early. He's not a fast starter, to say the least. If you look back at his most recent performance against Roundtree, if you look at his fight against Rakic, if you look at really any one of his performances ever in the UFC, he always has a difficult time getting started. But once he starts and once he's able to pressure effectively, that's really where he's able to find his finishes, and that's where he's able to have a lot of his success. And I think we're going to see a very similar thing in this performance versus Carlos Ulberg. As early, Carlos has really good footwork, he's really fast, and he has good power. So I think we're going to see that play out in the first couple of rounds, where he's going to land big shots early. A lot of fans are going to get nervous. Maybe he's actually going to win the fight, but there's eventually going to be that moment in the fight where Jiri Prochazka just steps on the gas and steps on that legendary Jiri pressure. From that point, I think he's going to land big shots and find the knockout. And I feel that way for a few different reasons. For one, as I said before, he has great, incredible pressure. We've seen that in all of his performances. But for two, Carlos Ulberg doesn't deal well with pressure. We've seen that multiple occasions. The one time that he was actually knocked out in the UFC against Kennedy and Juicecast, and it was a while ago, but nonetheless, a big reason for why that was because Kennedy did a good job at utilizing pressure. And Kennedy obviously doesn't have the same level of pressure of Jiri Prochazka. It's not even remotely close. So I do think the pressure of Jiri is really going to get to Carlos, for one, but for two, in that same fight against Kennedy and Juicecast, in the tail half of that fight, Carlos Ulberg did gas out pretty significantly as well, which made it easier. And Jiri obviously has incredible cardio. So I guess my official thoughts on the fight are, I see a very similar fight here to Khalil Roundtree versus Jiri Prochazka, where early Carlos Ulberg definitely could have a lot of success, and I'm expecting him to, but there's eventually going to be that one moment, maybe it's in round 3, 4, or 5, whenever it is, but there's eventually going to be that one moment where Jiri Prochazka decides to step on the gas, pressure effectively, land big shots, force Carlos Ulberg into uncomfortable situations by utilizing that pressure and eventually finding that finish. I think early, Carlos is going to do a good job at scoring, landing some good shots, utilizing his speed, and looking good early and winning the first couple rounds, most likely. But there's going to be that point where Jiri steps it up, finds the finish, and we'll go forward from there. So I'm excited about the fight nonetheless. I definitely would be really excited to see Jiri Prochazka as champion once again. He's one of those fighters in the UFC that kind of everybody loves. I don't really know anybody who dislikes Jiri Prochazka, so it'll be cool for him to get that championship belt once again. No guarantee, obviously. It's not the easiest fight in the world against Carlos Ulberg, but I think stylistically, it's not a bad matchup for Jiri, and I do think he has a really good chance to have a lot of success here and once again become the light heavyweight champion. Now, also, I was hearing some chatter about this fight as well, saying that this is an illegitimate title shot, as Jiri Prochazka was knocked out twice by Alex Pereira, and the only reason why he's getting the opportunity here is because Alex Pereira is moving up to heavyweight, which I guess theoretically is true. If Alex Pereira stayed at the weight class, I'm sure Jiri would not get the opportunity, or maybe he would, but he wouldn't deserve it if he did get it. But at the same time, I don't really buy into that much, because you can say the same thing for almost any weight class. You can say the same thing for Volkanovski. He's an illegitimate champion because he got knocked out by Ilia Topuria, and the only reason why he was once again the champion is because Ilia Topuria moved up a weight class. You can say the same thing for a lot of guys, honestly, at a lot of different weight classes, and especially as of late, as it's becoming more and more common that fighters are getting the belt, defending their belt once, and then moving up. You're going to get more and more of these examples. So theoretically, I guess people who say that are right, but at the end of the day, I don't really have much of an issue with it. I think it's a legitimate title fight. I think it's a really good fight, and I'm excited for it. So 327 is going to be a really good card, and we'll get a little bit more into that in depth in tomorrow's episode of the Juicecast, alongside with some videos and live streams on my main channel in Juicy MMA as well. But the next topic that I wanted to touch upon is kind of also related around Alex Pereira, but is, can anyone become a triple champion in the UFC? Now, this is actually a video that I put together on my main channel, Juicy MMA, but I wanted to talk about this a little bit more in depth on this, Juicecast channel. So essentially, my thoughts on this are, yes, I do think it'll eventually happen, but it's going to be very difficult to do because at this point, the two guys that I would say are most likely to do it are either Ilia Topuria or Alex Pereira. And for either one of those guys, it's going to be incredibly difficult, as Ilia Topuria and Alex Pereira actually are already double champions. And at least for Alex, he's going for his third belt. And for Ilia, he's not there yet, but he probably will be going for that third belt after he beats Justin Gaethje. But let's start with Alex Pereira before we move on to Ilia. So if you consider the first triple champion in UFC history as an interim champion at heavyweight for Alex, then yes, I think he could do it. As honestly, I think he should be a favorite against Ciryl Gane. I do think he has a lot of weapons that can hurt Ciryl Gane. His calf kicks, jab to the body, high kicks, that left hook, of course, right straight. There's a lot of things he can do to slow down the pace and pressure and movement of Ciryl Gane, and I do think he could win that fight. So if you consider the first triple champion in UFC history to be an interim champion, then yeah, actually, I think Alex is going to do it. I favor him to beat Ciryl Gane. But if you consider the first triple champion to be a legitimate triple champion, then it's going to be a little bit tougher, because in terms of Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira, I think Alex will have a lot of trouble in that particular matchup. I think, yes, early on, theoretically, he can land a big shot and knock out Tom Aspinall, as Tom Aspinall kind of has that issue. I was talking about this a little bit in my streams, but he kind of has that issue about when he's backing away, his chin's up in the air. And somebody who's as skilled as Alex Pereira definitely could throw a high kick at the end of one of his combinations and catch Tom Aspinall, I should say, and find the knockout. Or even if he's able to land a big left hook and close, definitely could knock out Tom Aspinall, I should say. So it is possible Alex can beat Tom, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to do so. I think the speed is going to be a bit of an issue for Alex from Tom, but most importantly, I think the wrestling is going to be the biggest issue. Tom, honestly, is a very well-rounded fighter at the heavyweight division. Not only is he athletic for heavyweight, but he's athletic in general, and on top of that, he's very well-rounded. I do think he'll be able to find takedowns over Alex. Alex is going to be significantly smaller as compared to Tom. Alex said that he's going to be weighing around 235, 240 at the heavyweight division, which is fine. It's definitely, good enough to beat a lot of guys at the weight class, but going up against a guy like Tom Aspinall, who's, legitimately a lot heavier than Alex Pereira, I think that's really going to show up in that particular fight, especially in the grappling, takedown defense, as well as getting back to your feet after getting taken down. So I think Tom Aspinall is a really bad fight, actually, for Alex Pereira. So for Alex Pereira, I don't think he'll be a triple champion. I think he'll get the interim belt and technically be a triple champion, but I don't think he's going to be an official 3-division champion. But as for Ilia Topuria, I think it's a little bit more interesting because, of course, already at this point, he's a double champion. His next fight is at the White House against Justin Gaethje, a fight that I think basically everybody thinks he's going to win. I know a lot of people are kind of saying online, oh, people are underestimating Justin Gaethje. He has a real chance to win this fight because of X, Y, and Z. I don't buy it. I honestly don't buy it. I think people who are saying that don't even believe it. They just want to be, theoretically, if the craziest thing in MMA history ever happens, if Justin Gaethje actually beats Ilia Topuria, which honestly would be one of the craziest things we've ever seen in MMA history, they want to be on the right side of history. They're kind of hedging their bets in a weird way. That's my opinion for why some fans are saying that. But in terms of legitimately looking at this fight, seeing what Gaethje has done well as of late, and seeing what Ilia Topuria has done as of late, and just looking at their styles in general, I don't get how you come away with the conclusion that Justin Gaethje can win this fight. I just don't get it. I could be wrong, obviously, and then people will clip this, obviously, of course, after it happens. But I just don't see it, to be completely honest. But anyways, so assuming that he does beat Justin Gaethje, I think there's a very good chance he moves up to 170 and fights against Islam Makhachev for that triple champ, or at least at the potential of becoming a triple champion. Now, I do think there is a chance that Ilia could beat Islam. I really do. If he keeps the fight on the feet, he's just a better boxer. Islam is honestly a pretty overrated striker, in my opinion. He has good kicks. He has a good calf kick and a nice left head kick. But outside of that, I think his boxing is pretty overrated, not very technical. He's defensively sound on the feet. Yes, I do agree with that. But there's not much in terms of his offensive striking that I think is elite. And I think if he's forced to stay on the feet against a guy like Ilia Topuria, who has the power that he does, but also is as technical as Ilia is, it's going to be be real trouble for Islam Makhachev. So I see a path to victory for Islam, or for Ilia Topuria, I should say. But with that being said, at 170 pounds, I think you still would have to favor Islam Makhachev just because he's going to be so much bigger than Ilia. If we're being honest, Ilya's not even big for 145. So moving the jump up all the way up until 170 against a legitimate 170 pounder in Islam, which in my opinion, he's a legitimate 170 pounder. He was cutting a lot of weight to make 55. It's just a very difficult thing to do. And especially considering that not only is Islam a legitimate 170 pounder, but he's also an elite grappler. It's going to be difficult to deal with that difference in size if you are Ilia Topuria. Not impossible. As I said, keep the fight on the feet, knock him out. That's your best chance if you are Ilia. But with that being said, you still have to favor Islam. So at this current moment, I don't see anybody that has a very good chance, I'll put it that way, of becoming a triple champion. For Alex, I don't see it. Honestly, I don't see him beating Tom Aspinall. Possible. I just don't see it. And as for Ilia Topuria, there's a path to victory, but it's just so difficult to get past that size difference between him and Islam, especially considering the grappling, even outside of the size difference. You probably would give the edge to Islam, although Ilia has looked really good in the grappling. I think it's close, but you probably would have to give a slight edge to Islam based upon the grappling ability. So I don't know. At this point, I don't see anybody that close to that moment or of becoming a triple champion. But eventually, I do think there is going to be a guy that comes around. Maybe it's Hamza Chimaev. I don't know. Maybe he'll beat Sean Strickland in his next title fight, move up another weight class of the light heavyweight division, get the title there, and then move up to heavyweight, get the title there. I don't know. I mean, obviously, anything's possible. I don't think it's super likely, but anything's possible. But at this current moment, I don't see any of the current guys that are close to becoming a triple champion actually achieving that. And also, I didn't even mention Islam Makhachev. I don't think he has any interest in moving up a third weight class and getting that third belt. And even if he did, I just think he'd be a little bit too small, and I don't think he would have a great chance at getting a third belt, to be completely honest. So that's kind of what my thoughts are on triple champions. Eventually, I think they'll happen, but at this point, I just don't see anybody that's currently close actually going to achieve that goal, unless you consider Alex Pereira getting the interim belt a triple champion, which I guess technically it would be. But for me personally, when I'm talking about a triple champion, I'm talking about being a champion, undisputed champion of 3 particular weight classes. So that's my thoughts on that. Also, kind of tailing off that point, the next topic that I wanted to get into, this is something that a lot of people have been talking about as of late, is Alex Pereira too small for the heavyweight division? In my opinion, I think the answer is no. As I said before, I think against Tom Aspinall, it'll be a bit of an issue. But in general, I think he's okay. As I said before, he's weighing around 235, 240, I believe, at the heavyweight division. And, you know, guys are going to be bigger than him, obviously. There's going to be some fighters that are 20 plus pounds heavier than Alex Pereira, which is a big advantage for those fighters. But at the end of the day, if you're Alex Pereira, you want to do a good job at not just putting on muscle or putting on weight just to put on weight. You don't want to be 265 if you're Alex Pereira just to match the weight of your opponents, because obviously his build, his frame isn't really suited for 265 pounds. So if he theoretically got to that weight, he'll probably be a lot slower. His cardio wouldn't be as good, and there'll be a lot of issues that he deals with at that weight. But considering that he's kind of keeping his weight under wraps, staying around 235, 240, I think that's kind of the optimal sort of weight for Alex Pereira. Yes, as I said, there's going to be guys that are heavier than him, of course. And, you know, Tom Aspinall is obviously going to be heavier than him whenever they fight, assuming they do. But at the end of the day, I think that gives you the best chance, if you're Alex Pereira, to actually have the advantages that you would have. You'll probably be a little bit faster than a lot of the heavyweights, not against Cyril Gane or Tom Aspinall, actually, but in general, against other guys, you'll be faster than them. And also, it kind of, you know, leads you to a point where you're not going to gas yourself out quickly because you have so much additional muscle or so much additional fat on you in general. So is he too small for the heavyweight division? No, honestly, I don't think so. I think it's optimal. And I think, as I said before, guys kind of get too much in that realm that if you're moving up a weight class, especially to heavyweight, you have to weigh 265 pounds. You know, you're going to be at a significant weight disadvantage. If you don't do that, you're going to lose every fight at heavyweight. If you don't do that, I don't really buy into that. I think there are some advantages that you are taking away if you're just trying to put on additional weight, just to put on the additional weight. So I like where Alex Pereira is at this point. I think it's totally fine. And I do think he's going to have a lot of success at his debut at the heavyweight division. Now, I guess the question would be, if he does beat Cyril Gane, obviously at that point he'll fight Tom Aspinall next. But if he loses to Cyril Gane, I kind of wonder where Alex goes forward from that point on. Does he decide to retire immediately at that point? Does he decide to fight some other guys at the heavyweight division and try to re-earn his shot at that weight class against Tom Aspinall or Cyril Gane, I guess, at that point? Curious to see what he would like to do. Obviously, he's also getting a little bit older, but at the same time, he's fighting at the heavyweight division. That sucks for one. But for two, when you talk about those higher weight classes, guys are kind of just able to stick around a lot longer as compared to the lower weight classes. Like, for example, somebody who's 38 years old is never going to have a lot of success at flyweight, but at heavyweight, you see it a lot more frequently, or even at light heavyweight, you see it a lot more frequently. Jan Blachowicz is a top 5 guy currently at the light heavyweight division, which is crazy to think about. Obviously, I do think, or not obviously, but I do think he probably loses his next fight to Guskov, the rematch. The first fight was a draw. I think the rematch is going to favor Guskov at this point, as Jan's only getting older. But nonetheless, he's still competitive with a lot of these fighters, and I personally think he beat Carlos Ulberg, who's competing for the belt relatively soon, or well, this weekend. So, you know, I don't know. I do think Alex is going to be okay if he theoretically wanted to fight longer, but it'll be interesting to see what he actually wants to do going forward. But the last topic that I wanted to touch upon for this podcast episode is fighter pay. Now, I know this has been a central topic of discussion from the MMA fan base for quite a while. Essentially, everybody in the MMA fan base, maybe with some exceptions, but more or less everybody thinks that fighter pay is too low, and there's a lot of negatives that come alongside with that. Of course, most importantly, the fighters don't get paid enough, and there's a lot of issues that they need to go through when they're, putting their lives on the line each and every fight that they go into, but all of a sudden they can't afford, just to live fighting in the UFC. And obviously that's a big issue, but there's some other issues in terms of matchmaking because the UFC is not paying these fighters enough. We're kind of not seeing those biggest fights that we really want to see. Fights that we used to see in the past, the best fight the best, but at this point it's becoming less and less likely. So there's a lot of issues with fighter pay, but my official stance on fighter pay is no question about it. I want to see fighters get paid more. I think there's a lot of benefits to that. And even outside of the benefits for the fans' perspective, from the fighters' perspective, they're putting their lives on the line. They should be getting paid more for it. They should be getting universal health care. I mean, I think that goes without saying. It really should be something that they get granted. And these are all things that they are not granted at this point. I think the bonuses should be a little bit higher. I mean, I know the UFC did a good job at making the bonuses higher. Every single finish also gets a bonus now. But there's a lot of guys that are getting a 12-12 contract. I think the pay should be higher. There's no question about that. But with that being said, it goes both ways. I think there are certain examples of certain fighters that get paid too much, actually. Like, for example, MVP. I don't theoretically know his contract, but I'm sure he's getting paid at the very least 100 and 100 just to fight, 100 to fight, 100 to win. But he's putting on very lackluster performances. So because of that, I think there are certain fighters that are actually overpaid in the UFC. Even Mackenzie Dern, I believe, gets paid a lot. And I don't think these fighters are really driving the viewership. Maybe Mackenzie Dern for other reasons. But in general, I don't think a lot of these fighters are actually driving the viewership. And especially considering how boring a lot of their fights are, a lot of these lower level women's MMA fighters or even MVP in men's MMA. And of course, there's other examples in men's MMA as well. I just think there's definitely certain fighters that get paid a little bit too much. So with that being said, I think it kind of goes both ways a little bit. I can kind of understand certain points that the UFC will make about certain fighters. But with that being said, in general, a lot of these fighters are getting underpaid. I mean, you see it all the time. Not Adrian Yanez. Who was a fighter that just fought recently on UFC London that was broke? I'm forgetting his name. Danny Silva. That's what it was. He said he was broke. I mean, and he's a legitimate fighter at the weight class. He's not ranked, but I think he's a legitimately very good fighter. Came up with a big performance and didn't get a performance bonus for that. Why? I have no idea. And especially considering the fact that he said he was broke after the fight, kind of sucks. Makes you feel bad. Considering, he's in the UFC, he accomplished his dream, but still at this point, he's still not able to pay the bills in the way he would like to. And, he needs more money. So it sucks when you see stuff like that. Or even Jared Cannonier, who was a legitimate top 5 guy at the time. Obviously, also he fought for the belt against Israel Adesanya. Regardless of what you thought about that fight, there's no question that Jared Cannonier is a good fighter, to say the very least. So the fact that at a point he was broke as well, I don't think he is now. I think he's okay from what I know. Not sure. But at least at the time when he was a legitimate top 5 guy or top 6 guy, whatever he was at the time, the fact that he said he was broke as well kind of just tells you all you need to know about fighter pay. These guys are not getting paid enough. If you're on a 12-12 contract, you're not getting paid enough. Even if you're a really good fighter and even if you're winning and let's say you're getting $24,000 for one fight, that's still not really enough considering the fact that let's say you'll fight twice a year. You're just not getting paid a lot of money. And then on top of that, you need to pay the taxes that come out of your paycheck for one. For two, you need to pay your coaches, your gym, your medical expenses. None of these things are covered by the UFC. And it's definitely a pretty big issue for the fans, to a certain extent, because we're not really seeing the biggest fights that we want to see, in part because of fighter pay. Not the only reason, obviously. I know a lot of people are saying Islam ducked Ilya, and it's not really because of the money. I actually agree with that. But in general, a lot of times when we don't see the best fight the best, it's because of the money. But also, most importantly, for the fighters themselves. If these guys can't afford to live, it's just very sad, honestly, that these guys accomplish their goals, making it to the UFC, and still at this point they're not able to pay the bills. It's unfortunate, and also even in general, just for the growth of the sport. If other fans, or not other fans, but if other potential athletes that are coming up see the amount of money that UFC fighters are getting paid as compared to players in the NBA or the NFL or something like that, I'm not talking about any random, Joe. I'm talking about like an absolutely elite athlete that has interest in fighting in MMA, or also has some interest in playing basketball or football or whatever. I don't know how common that is, but theoretically, if you are one of those guys, obviously you're going to pick the NFL or the NBA because you get paid 10x, 20x, 30x, 40x what you would ever get paid in the UFC. Rookies in the NBA, I believe the league minimum is like at least $1 million per year. And in UFC, it's 12 and 12, which is like just hilarious to see that comparison. I know, I get it. The NBA is a significantly bigger organization as compared to the UFC. Obviously, they're going to pay their players more than UFC fighters. There's no question about it. But when the gap is that severe, it makes you think a lot of these super athletes are not going to choose MMA. They're not going to choose the UFC, and they're going to go to the NBA or the NFL or MLB. I don't know how many examples of that there are, but theoretically, these super athletes are going to go to other organizations. And I think it's also a really big reason for why we're not seeing a lot of American champions and a lot of American fighters that are honestly very high level guys. It's a bit of an issue. We kind of saw it for the White House card. Yes, we do have an American fighter fighting for the belt in Justin Gaethje, but he doesn't even deserve it. And he's also a little bit older on top of that. But outside of Justin Gaethje, who are the American fighters that could legitimately become champions? I just don't see it. And I think a big reason for why that is actually fighter pay. But anyways, boys, that's kind of the episode 4 of the Juicecast. Those are some of the topics that I wanted to get into. I appreciate you guys for, watching along, and, comment down below any of your thoughts on any of the different topics that I talked about in this video. Also, if you guys have any additional topics you would like me to touch upon in future episodes of the Juicecast, also be sure to let me know down below in the comment section. I appreciate you guys for watching once again. And until the next time, peace out, fellas.